Did you know that 90% of the people watching my videos are not subscribed? So, please subscribe if you're enjoying the stories. Also, tell me in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is there. I still think about the first night Zane slept in that apartment, because at the time it felt like a normal thing two 21-year-old friends would do. I was Denial, a final year accounting student in Rawalpindi, working evenings at my uncle's stationery shop, and Zane was my best friend since class 6. He had just found a cheap one-bedroom place near Satellite Town, and because his older brother had taken the family car for a wedding, I helped him move in using my uncle's small delivery van. We were both tired, sweaty, and laughing at nothing by the time the last box was inside, so when we heard footsteps from somewhere over our heads, I didn't react the way I probably should have. Zane lived on the top floor. That sounds like the kind of detail you only understand later, but in the moment it had an easy shape. Old buildings make sounds. Water tanks shift. Pipes knock. The roof expands after a hot day and cools at night. I had heard all those explanations growing up. Also, I was trying not to ruin Zane's mood. He had been saving for months while sharing a bedroom with 2 cousins, and that apartment, even with its chipped tiles and strange smell of paint over damp walls, meant he finally had a door he could close. The building was 4 floors, narrow from the outside, with shops on the ground level and apartments above. The stairs were too tight for the sofa, so we had to stand it on its end, scrape one wall, apologize to nobody, and twist it through the landing like we were solving a puzzle. The landlord, a thin man named Naveed, watched us from the 2nd floor landing. He kept saying, slowly, slowly, but he never helped. He had a soft voice and kept his hands behind his back. Zane had found the apartment through a cousin of a cousin. The rent was almost half of what everyone else was asking in that area. When I said that was strange, Zane said the building was old, and the owner wanted a quiet tenant. Quiet means boring, he said. I can do boring. The flat itself was small but not terrible. A main room, a tiny kitchen, a bathroom off the bedroom, and a narrow balcony facing the back of another building. The walls had been painted white badly. Every switch plate was slightly crooked. There were 2 mirrors already installed, one above the bathroom sink and one fixed to the inside of the bedroom wardrobe door. I noticed the mirror in the bathroom because its edges looked dirty, not with dust exactly, but with thin gray scratches in the paint around the frame, like someone had tried to pry it loose with a knife. Maybe previous tenant hated mirrors, I said. Zane was unpacking plates from a newspaper bundle. Maybe he was ugly. We laughed because we were exhausted, and because joking was easier than admitting the flat had a weird feeling. Not haunted. Not like that. Just used in a way that didn't match its emptiness. Naveed came by around 9 to drop off the 2nd key. He didn't knock like a visitor. He tapped once and opened the door at the same time, stopping only when the chain caught. Zane looked at me, then unhooked it. Sorry, Beta, Naveed said. I thought you were still carrying boxes. He handed Zane a key with a green plastic tag. His eyes moved around the room slowly, touching every box, every bag, the mattress on the floor, then me. You're staying tonight too? He asked. Just tonight, I said, helping him settle. He nodded. Good. First night feels strange in a new place. There was nothing threatening in how he said it. Still, I remember the way he leaned a little to look past Zane into the bedroom. After he left, Zane made tea in 2 mismatched mugs we found in one of his boxes. We sat on the floor with our backs against the sofa, eating chips and bakery patties, planning how he would arrange the room. He was excited in a quiet way, not loud. He kept looking at the lock on the front door, then smiling. My own place, he said. I wanted to be happy for him. I was happy for him. That's why I kept explaining things away. The second strange thing happened around 11. We were putting bed sheets on the mattress when something tapped inside the bathroom wall. Not a pipe knock. 3 taps. A pause. 2 taps. Zane froze with one corner of the sheet still in his hand. Waterline? I said. He nodded too quickly. Yeah, waterline. Then it came again, softer. We stood there listening. The bathroom light buzzed. Somewhere outside, a bike passed on the road. Nothing else. Zane took out his phone and called Naveed. He put it on speaker. Before Zane even finished explaining, Naveed said, "Pipes. Building is old. Sometimes pressure comes when people downstairs use water. But it sounds like it's inside the wall," Zane said. "That is where pipes are." Naveed gave a small laugh. "Don't worry. Sleep." He hung up first. Zane looked embarrassed, like he had been scolded for being a child. That was his weakness. He wanted to seem like someone who could handle living alone. He had spent so long being treated like the younger brother, the extra cousin, the guy sleeping in someone else's room, that he didn't want his first night to turn into a story about how he got scared by plumbing. So I didn't push it. We kept unpacking until close to midnight. Then the footsteps came again. Not one or two. A slow crossing. Right above us. The ceiling was concrete. I looked up and followed the sound with my eyes as it moved from above the bedroom toward the bathroom area. Zane's face went flat. "The roof," I said. "Could be someone on the roof." "Door to roof is locked," he said. "Landlord maybe." "At midnight?" Neither of us moved for a few seconds. Then Zane grabbed his keys and went into the stairwell before I could stop him. I followed with my phone flashlight on. The top landing had a metal door leading to the roof. It was locked with a large padlock, dusty around the loop like it hadn't been opened in a while. There was no sound from the other side. No footsteps. No voices. Zane touched the padlock, then wiped dust off his fingers. Back inside, we didn't joke anymore. The apartment felt smaller after that. We turned off the main room light and left the kitchen bulb on. Zane said he was going to shower. I sat on the mattress scrolling my phone without reading anything. The bathroom door didn't close properly unless you lifted it. I heard him struggle with it, then the shower started. A minute later, the water cut off with a cough in the pipe. Zane cursed. I called out, "Need help?" "No, wait." Then his voice changed. "Denial?" I got up. He opened the door wearing track pants and a towel around his shoulders. His hair was wet, but his face had gone dry looking. "What?" He pointed at the bathroom mirror. At first I didn't understand. The mirror had fogged from the shower, but at the top right corner, something had been wiped clear from the other side of the glass. A small curved smear, like a fingertip, had dragged through steam behind it. I stepped closer and stared. The mirror looked normal, except the scratches around the frame were clearer now. They weren't random. Most were near the corners, deep enough to show old dark wood under the paint. Zane whispered, "How can steam be behind a mirror?" I didn't answer. I touched the glass. It shifted. Not much. Just enough to click against something behind it. We both stepped back. For a moment, the apartment was silent. Then from somewhere in the wall, not above us, not below us, came a slow exhale. Zane said my name again, but it barely came out. I wanted to grab him and leave right then. We should have. But fear doesn't always become action immediately. Sometimes it becomes a list of problems. Where would Zane go tonight? What about all his things? What would we even tell people? The mirror breathed. We were two grown guys standing in a bathroom, and the idea of sounding ridiculous still had power over us. So I did the practical thing. I slid my fingers under the mirror edge. The whole frame moved outward half an inch. Zane grabbed my wrist. "Don't." I let go. We backed out and closed the bathroom door. Zane pushed a box of books against it. Then another. Then we sat in the main room with the lights on. Neither of us slept for a long time. Around 2, Zane started nodding off sitting up. I told him I'd stay awake. I meant it, but I was exhausted from moving all day. My eyes kept closing and snapping open. The building settled around us. The fridge hummed. A dog barked somewhere far away. At some point, I slept. I woke because the kitchen light was off. The room was not fully dark. A thin gray-blue light came from the bathroom because Zane had left that light on. The boxes against the bathroom door had been moved aside. Zane was standing in the bedroom doorway. For one confused second, I thought he was sleepwalking. He was facing the bathroom, shoulders hunched, arms hanging loose. He was whispering. I couldn't understand the words. His voice had that dry, breathy sound people get when they are trying not to wake someone. "Zane," I said. He didn't turn. I sat up slowly. The bathroom door was open. From where I was on the mattress, I could see part of the mirror. Zane took one step forward and whispered again. Then I heard another whisper answer him. It wasn't coming from inside the room. It came from behind the mirror, too close and too low. I got to my feet without meaning to make any noise. The floor tile was cold. I reached Zane and touched his arm. He flinched so hard he almost fell into me. His eyes were open. He wasn't sleepwalking. He looked like he had been standing there for hours. "Don't say anything," he breathed. The bathroom mirror was open now. It had swung outward on tiny hinges hidden under the paint. Behind it was a black rectangular space just wide enough for a person to squeeze through sideways. The smell coming out was damp concrete, old cloth, and cigarette smoke. From inside that space, something shifted. I pulled Zane back. A hand appeared around the inside edge of the opening. Not a monster. Not a reflection. A human hand, pale under the bathroom light, with a silver ring on the little finger. The hand didn't reach out. It just held the edge, waiting. Then Naveed's soft voice came through the wall. "Beta, why are you awake?" Zane made a sound I had never heard from him before, like air getting crushed out of his chest. I put my hand over his mouth and dragged him backward into the main room. There was a metal trunk near the sofa. I pushed Zane down behind it and crouched with him. The bathroom light clicked off. A few seconds passed. Then the mirror hinge creaked. Someone stepped into the bathroom. I could see the rectangle of the bathroom doorway from where we were hiding. A shadow crossed it. Slow, careful, bare feet on tile. Naveed was inside the apartment. He moved like someone who already knew the layout in the dark. He didn't bump the doorframe. He didn't hesitate. He walked from the bathroom into the bedroom, then stopped. I held Zane so tightly my fingers hurt. Naveed whispered, "Zane?" No answer. He came into the main room. We were behind the trunk and a stack of boxes, maybe 5 feet from him. I could see the bottom of his shower. His feet were dirty at the heels. He stood there listening. My phone was in my pocket. I didn't dare touch it. The screen lighting up felt like a death sentence. The front door was behind him, chained and locked from the inside. The key was on the floor near the mattress where Zane had dropped it earlier. Naveed took another step. The floor gave a tiny squeak under him. He turned toward the kitchen, maybe thinking we had gone there. That was the second that saved us. I reached forward, slow as I could, and picked up the key. The metal tag clicked softly against the tile. Naveed stopped. My whole body went tight. From outside the building, a motorcycle revved loudly in the lane. In that cover of sound, I pulled Zane toward the door. We crawled first, then crouched. Naveed was still facing the kitchen. I slid the key into the lock with both hands, because my fingers were shaking. The chain was louder than anything in the world. It lifted, scraped, and fell against the door. Naveed turned. I opened the door just wide enough and shoved Zane through. Naveed came across the room fast, but not running. That was worse somehow, like he still believed he had time. We didn't wait for the lift. There wasn't one anyway. We took the stairs hard, bare feet and socks slapping concrete. Zane stumbled on the second landing, and I yanked him up by his shirt. Behind us, the apartment door opened fully. Naveed didn't shout. He came down after us quietly. That quiet made me move faster. On the first floor landing, a woman's door opened on a chain. She looked out, saw us, then saw something above us. Her expression changed. "Open the gate," I shouted. The main gate at the bottom had a latch that stuck. I slammed into it with my shoulder and fumbled with the bolt. Zane was behind me saying, "Please, please, please," over and over. The bolt lifted. The gate opened. We ran into the street and didn't stop until we reached the main road where a tea stall was still open for truck drivers. The man there stared at us like we were drunk. Zane was barefoot. I had one slipper on. I called my uncle first, not the police. I don't know why. Maybe because I needed someone familiar to say what to do. My uncle arrived in 20 minutes with 2 of his workers. Only then did we call the police. By the time they came, Naveed was gone. The apartment door was open. The bathroom mirror was closed again, but the frame had fresh cracks near one corner where it hadn't fit back properly. Behind it, police found a narrow service crawl space running between units and old plumbing shafts. It connected to a locked storage area near the roof stairs, the same roof door we thought was sealed. Inside that space were cigarette butts, a plastic stool, and a little battery lamp. They also found marks around the other mirror, the wardrobe one, but that one hadn't been opened yet. Or maybe it had before Zane moved in. Naveed wasn't the legal owner. That came out 2 days later. He was some distant relative of the actual owner, managing the place unofficially while the owner lived in Dubai. The woman on the first floor told my uncle she had heard repair sounds at odd hours for months, but Naveed always said he was fixing water pressure issues. Zane moved his things out the next afternoon. He didn't even pack properly. We threw clothes into bags and carried boxes down while my uncle and his workers stood in the hallway. Zane never looked at the bathroom. The damaged mirror frame and the broken bathroom latch were the only proof that mattered to me. Everything else people could explain away if they wanted. Old building, illegal modifications, creepy landlord. Maybe he only watched. Maybe he only stole. People love turning danger into something smaller once it's over. Zane stayed with his cousins again after that, and for once he didn't complain about sharing a room. He changed his phone number because Naveed still had his rental form. I stopped helping friends move into places without checking every door, every cupboard, every bathroom panel. I'm the annoying one now. I tap walls. I look behind mirrors. I ask who has keys. A few weeks later, Zane and I drove past that building because it was on the way to my uncle's shop. I slowed without meaning to. The balcony of his old apartment was empty. The bathroom window was dark. Then Zane grabbed my arm. In the bedroom window, someone was standing behind the curtain. Only the shape was visible. A slim man, head tilted slightly, one hand resting near the glass. For 1 second, from the angle of the street, it looked like Zane. But Zane was sitting beside me in the van, breathing fast, staring at the same window. I drove on. We didn't report it. We didn't stop. Sometimes cheap rent is just cheap rent. Sometimes a place is available because someone before you noticed what you noticed and left too quickly to explain. Story 2. The voice note was only 4 seconds long, and the strange part was not even what it said. I was 17, in my second year of college in Lahore, spending a Saturday night at my best friend Mina's house while her parents were in Faisalabad for a cousin's engagement. Sarah was asleep beside me on Mina's bedroom rug, one arm over her face, her phone charging across the room. So when Mina's phone lit up with Sarah's name and played Sarah's sleepy whisper saying, "Don't open the guest room," we both just stared at the screen. Mina and I had been friends since school, but Sarah was the loud one in our group, the one who sent voice notes instead of typing, because she said texts had no personality. That night we had been recording stupid messages for our group chat, pretending to be radio hosts, teachers, aunties from weddings, anything that made us laugh. Mina's house felt safe in that careless way familiar houses do. I had slept there plenty of times. Her parents trusted us. Her older brother was in another city for university. The only reason we were vulnerable was that we were two girls alone in a big house that suddenly felt bigger than we remembered. Mina's weakness was that she hated seeming dramatic. She had this habit of smiling when she was uncomfortable, like she was apologizing for taking up space. I was worse in a different way. I trusted familiar places too fast. If I had eaten in your kitchen and knew where your bathroom towels were, my brain filed the place under safe. The first voice note could have had a normal explanation. That's what made it work on us. Sarah mumbled in her sleep sometimes. Her phone had been acting weird all evening, restarting on its own after we recorded too many videos. Maybe she had accidentally scheduled something. Maybe Mina had played an old message without realizing it. We were tired and sugar high from chips and cold drink, and the AC was humming loud enough to make everything feel a little unreal. Mina replayed it once. "Don't open the guest room." Sarah's voice, definitely. Soft, close to the mic. I looked across the room. Sarah was still asleep. Her phone screen was black. Mina whispered, "Sarah." Sarah didn't move. Mina crawled over and shook her ankle. "Sarah, wake up." Sarah dragged her arm off her face. "What? Did you send me this?" Mina played it again. Sarah pushed herself onto one elbow, annoyed at first, then confused. "No, it came from you. My phone's there." We all looked at it. It was plugged in by the dressing table, too far for her to have touched in her sleep. The charging cable was short. Even if she had gotten up, one of us would have heard her crossing the room. Mina's floorboards near the bed always clicked. Sarah got up, took her phone, and opened the chat. The message was there, sent at 12:38 a.m. from her account. Her face changed. "I didn't send that." Mina tried to laugh. "Maybe you're possessed." "Don't." The guest room was at the far end of the upstairs hallway. It used to be Mina's grandmother's room before she passed away, then became the room where they kept extra bedding, old suitcases, and a treadmill nobody used. When we were younger, Mina hated going in there alone, but lots of kids hate certain rooms. Every house has one. We stood in Mina's doorway, looking down the hall. The guest room door was closed. That was the second small wrong thing. Mina's mother always left it open because the room smelled musty if it stayed shut. I knew that because Ani complained about it every time I visited. The door being closed wasn't impossible, just off. Mina said, "Maybe Ami closed it before leaving." "At night," Sarah said. "Before leaving, I mean." No one moved. Then Mina's phone buzzed again. Not Sarah this time. A message from the group chat. One of the other girls had replied with laughing emojis to the old voice notes we had sent earlier. Normal. The ordinary notification broke the fear for a second, and that was enough for Mina to start walking. "I'm checking it," she said. Sarah grabbed her wrist. "Why would you do that after the message said not to?" "Because it's my house." That sounded brave, but I could hear the embarrassment under it. Mina didn't want to be the girl scared of her own guest room at 17. We followed her. The hallway light was off, so Mina switched it on. The tube light flickered twice before holding steady. Family photos lined the wall. Mina at age 10 in a school uniform, Mina's parents and Murray, her brother with a cricket bat. Normal things. Things that should have made the hallway feel safe. At the guest room door, Mina turned the handle. It didn't move. She tried again harder. "Locked?" I said. "It doesn't have a key lock." Mina pointed at the handle. "It only has that push button from inside." The little round privacy lock was pressed in. From inside. Sarah stepped back. "Nope." Mina put her ear to the door. I wanted to tell her not to, but the words got stuck. "What do you hear?" I whispered. "Nothing." She knocked once. "Hello?" No answer. We stood there in our socks, 3 girls in a silent hallway, all suddenly aware of every space behind us. The stairs, the bathroom, the dark rectangle of Mina's parents' bedroom at the other end. Mina called her mother. It rang and rang, then went to voicemail. She called her father. Same thing. They're probably at the function, she said, but her voice had gone thin. Sarah said, call your neighbor. Mina hesitated. At this time, that was Mina again. The fear of bothering someone almost beat the fear of a locked room. I understood it, which makes me angry now. Before she could decide, Sarah's phone made the outgoing message sound. We all turned. Sarah was holding it in both hands. The screen showed the chat with Mina. A new voice note had just been sent. Sarah stared at it like it had burned her. I didn't touch it. Mina didn't press play. So my stupid hand did. This time we all heard Sarah's voice, clearer than before. I told you not to check. The hallway seemed to narrow around us. From inside the guest room, the handle turned slowly. Not all the way. Just enough for the metal to creak against the lock. Then it returned to place. Sarah whispered, run. We did not run immediately. It's embarrassing, but it's true. For 2 seconds, we froze in a little cluster, because when something impossible happens, your body waits for the normal world to come back and correct it. Then the handle turned again. Mina grabbed my sleeve and pulled me toward the stairs. Halfway down, I heard something bump inside the guest room. Not loud. A knee against furniture, maybe. A person trying to move carefully in a cluttered room. That sound helped me because it made the danger human. A person could be avoided. A person had weight and hands and bad timing. A person could be locked in. At the bottom of the stairs, Mina went for the front door. The house had an outer gate and then the main door. The main door opened into a small entry area with a shoe rack. Mina's keys were usually in a bowl there. The bowl was empty. Mina stared into it. Sarah said, where are they? My keys were here. Then we heard the guest room door open upstairs. A soft scrape. A pause. One step into the hallway. We ran to the kitchen because the back door had a bolt. Mina slid it open, and the metal screamed in the quiet house. The back courtyard was small, with laundry lines and a high wall. The side gate leading to the driveway was locked with a padlock from inside. Mina grabbed the padlock. No, no, no. I looked up at the back wall. Too high. Smooth plaster. No footholds. From inside the house, a floorboard clicked at the top of the stairs. Sarah whispered, bathroom window. Mina shook her head. Too small. We moved back through the kitchen, slower now, because the person had started coming down the stairs. Not rushing. That was the worst part. Whoever it was knew we had nowhere easy to go. Mina's phone vibrated in her hand. Her father calling back. She almost dropped it answering. Baba, she whispered. His voice came through tinny and loud. Mina? Everything okay? There's someone in the house. What? In the guest room. Someone is inside. We're downstairs. He started asking questions too fast. Where are you? Door locked. Did you call police? Mina couldn't answer. She was crying without making sound. I took the phone. Uncle, we need the neighbor. Mr. Hamid. Now. Call him. Please. Mr. Hamid lived next door. He worked nights at a hospital pharmacy and usually came home around 1. I had seen him earlier through Mina's kitchen window when he left in his gray Suzuki, wearing his ID card around his neck. Uncle said, stay away from the stairs. I'm calling him. The call cut. The person reached the bottom step. We were in the dark dining room, crouched behind the table. Through the doorway, I could see the lower half of someone standing near the stairs. Loose dark trousers, bare feet, one hand resting against the wall. Then Sarah's phone, which she had forgotten to silence, lit up. The glow painted her face white. The person turned toward us. I grabbed a spoon from the table without thinking, as if a spoon could help. Mina had both hands over her mouth. Sarah pressed the side button on her phone again and again, trying to kill the light. The person took one step toward the dining room, then a car door slammed outside. Not in front of the house. Next door. The person stopped. A key rattled in a gate. Mr. Hamid's voice came from outside, confused and annoyed. "Mina? Beta? Are you inside?" I don't know what Mina's father said to him, but Mr. Hamid didn't sound sleepy anymore after that. The person in the hall moved fast toward the kitchen. I realized they were going for the backside gate, or maybe the courtyard wall. Sarah reached the dining room door and slammed it shut between us and the hall. It had no lock, so she dragged a chair under the handle. The person hit it from the other side so hard the chair legs scraped. Mina screamed then, one sharp sound. Mr. Hamid started pounding on the front door. "Open! Open the door! The keys are gone!" I shouted. The dining room door shook again. Mr. Hamid disappeared from the front. A few seconds later, metal clanged in the driveway. He had climbed over or forced the low side section near the meter boxes. I heard him in the courtyard, cursing under his breath. The person behind the dining room door turned away. We heard footsteps running toward the kitchen. Mr. Hamid shouted, "Who is there?" There was a crash in the kitchen, then a heavy thud against the back door. The side padlock rattled. Sarah pushed the chair tighter under the dining room handle. I grabbed Mina and pulled her toward the front door. The keys were gone, but the door had a manual latch. The outer gate was locked, but Mr. Hamid had gotten in somehow. We just needed out of the house. I lifted the latch. The main door opened. Mr. Hamid came through the side passage at the same time, holding a metal tire iron. He was in pharmacy scrubs, hair messy, one sandal half off. He looked more angry than scared. "Out," he said to us. "What about?" Mina started. "Out." He moved past us toward the kitchen, placing himself between us and that part of the house. We ran into the entry, then the driveway. Mr. Hamid's wife was outside the gate now, calling Mina's father on her phone and waving at us to come to her. Somehow, Mr. Hamid had opened the outer gate from inside after climbing in through the low side wall. The three of us stood barefoot on the street under the yellow streetlight. Sarah was shaking so hard her teeth clicked. Mina kept saying, my keys," like that was the one detail she could hold. Mr. Hamid did not chase the person. He blocked the kitchen door from the hallway side and kept shouting that police were on the way. We heard movement in the kitchen, then glass breaking. By the time police arrived, whoever had been inside had forced open the small pantry window into the back alley and gone. They did not find a ghost. They found something worse to me. Someone had been staying in that guest room for hours, maybe longer. Behind the folded blankets, police found an old canvas bag with a scarf, a water bottle, a packet of biscuits, and one of Sarah's hoodies from a sleepover months earlier. Sarah had thought she lost it. There was also a cheap phone with no SIM, logged into a cloned messaging app session linked to Sarah's number. I don't understand the technical part fully. Sarah's older cousin later said someone must have accessed her phone before and copied a login code or backup. All I know is that the voice notes came from a phone in that room, using Sarah's account. The object that made Mina go silent was under the bed, a small pink plastic hair clip with a butterfly on it. It wasn't ours. It belonged to a woman named Shagufta, who had worked in Mina's house years earlier when Mina's grandmother was sick. Mina's mother recognized it from an old photo because Shagufta always clipped her dupatta with those bright plastic clips. She had been let go after money went missing, but Mina's mother never pressed charges. Shagufta had also been the person who knew the guest room layout better than anyone. Police never found her that night. Later, they said they questioned a relative of hers and heard she had been seen near the neighborhood, asking if Mina's family still lived there. That didn't explain everything. It didn't explain why she had Sarah's hoodie or when she got inside. It didn't explain the locked door, except that the room's window latch had been loosened from outside and could be slipped with a thin strip of metal. The diary part came later, and I wish it hadn't. When Mina's mother cleaned the guest room the next day, she found Mina's childhood diary behind the treadmill, open to a page from when she was 8. The writing was messy, round, and dramatic like little kids write. It said, "Sarah is the only one who believes me about the woman in the guest room." Mina didn't remember writing it. Sarah didn't either. Mina's mother said Mina had gone through a phase after her grandmother died where she claimed someone watched from that room, but everyone thought it was grief and imagination. Maybe it was. Maybe Shagufta had been coming in even back then. Maybe she only came once and Mina saw her. Maybe the diary had been found by whoever was hiding there and placed open because they wanted Mina scared before they came out. That is the part one still hate most. The voice notes were terrifying, but they had a method. The locked door had a method. The diary felt personal. Mina's parents changed every lock, replaced the guest room handle with an outside key deadbolt, and installed cameras at the side passage and back alley. Mina stopped sleeping upstairs for months. Sarah logged out of every app, changed her number, and never sent voice notes for a long time. I started treating locked doors differently. Not like mysteries, like boundaries. Mina used to apologize too much. After that night, she stopped. Not completely, but enough that I noticed. If someone knocked and she didn't want to open, she didn't. If a relative said she was being rude, she let them say it. People make it sound like fear is always the thing to overcome. Sometimes fear is the only part of you that understands the situation before the polite part catches up. Story 3. The receptionist smiled at me and said, "Long ride from Multan, right?" Before I had told him where I came from. I was 23, working my first proper sales job for a medical supplies distributor, and I had taken an overnight bus to Islamabad for a Monday morning training session. My company had booked me into a budget hotel near Faizabad because it was cheap and close enough to the office by rideshare. I was alone, carrying one backpack, one laptop bag, and the kind of exhaustion that makes you grateful when any stranger already seems to know what you need. That was my weakness then. I trusted systems. Booking apps, rideshare apps, front desks, printed receipts, people wearing badges. I thought danger looked messy, not organized. I also didn't want to call my manager at midnight and sound like the new guy who couldn't handle a simple work trip. The bus dropped us near the terminal a little after 12:30 a.m. The air was cool and smelled like diesel and dust. My phone was at 11% because the charging port on the bus seat had been loose. I ordered a ride from the bus stop, but the driver called immediately and said the pickup area was crowded. Could I walk 2 minutes to the service road? That was normal enough. Drivers do that. His car was a white Alto. The plate matched the app. The driver was a man in his 40s with a trimmed beard and a brown jacket. His name in the app was Rashid. He had a small prayer bead bracelet around the gear shift and a paper cup of tea in the holder. "Hotel Crown Vista?" he asked. "Yes." He nodded and ended the ride before I had fully closed the door. I noticed. Of course I noticed. The map disappeared and the fare showed as completed. He said, "Network problem here. Same fare. Don't worry." I should have gotten out, but we were already pulling away from the bus stop and my battery had dropped to 10%. I was tired, new to the city, and the car still matched the app. Also, he knew the hotel name because it was in the booking. That felt like proof he was legitimate, even though it only proved he had seen the destination. The second small thing was that he didn't take the main road first. He cut through a quieter lane behind shuttered shops, saying there was construction ahead. I watched the blue dot on my map before the ride ended, trying to picture whether the route made sense. I had been to Islamabad only twice before. Every road looked both wide and unfamiliar. "First time at this hotel?" he asked. "For work," I said. "Training." I looked up. "What?" He tapped the steering wheel lightly. "People come here for office trainings. Cheap hotel." That was explainable too. Maybe he drove that route often. Maybe he guessed. I didn't answer. He noticed and turned on the radio low. We reached the hotel in about 12 minutes. It was on a service lane off a busier road, A narrow building with a glowing blue sign, a glass front, and a little ramp leading to the lobby. A security guard sat outside on a plastic chair, chin on his chest, asleep. The driver stopped before the ramp. "You pay cash?" he asked. "I paid in-app. Ride ended, brother." "I know. You ended it." He smiled in the rearview mirror. "Network problem." I didn't have the energy to argue. The difference was maybe a few hundred rupees. I paid him, told myself I would complain later, and got out. He did not drive away until I entered the lobby. Inside, the hotel smelled like floor cleaner and old cigarette smoke. The lobby lights were too bright. A wall clock above the counter said 12:56. A young man in a black waistcoat stood at reception, hair combed neatly, no name tag. Behind him were room keys hanging on hooks, and a printer with curled paper coming out. He smiled before I reached the desk. "Long ride from Multan, right?" I stopped with my ID halfway out of my wallet. "My booking says that?" "Bus people always look like that," he said easily. It was a good save. Maybe even a joke. I gave a tired laugh because I wanted the interaction to become normal again. He asked for my CNIC and booking confirmation. I handed both over. My phone was at 7% now. He glanced at the screen, wrote something in a register, and printed a receipt. "You requested quiet room," he said. "I don't think so." He looked at the paper. "It says away from elevator." I booked through the company. "Maybe they wrote that." He nodded. "Room 407. Top floor. Lift is not working after 3, so better go now." That sentence was strange. Not because lifts can't stop working, but because he said after 3 like it was a rule instead of a malfunction. Again, I let it pass. I was carrying bags. I wanted a shower. I wanted my phone on charge. The hallway on the 4th floor was empty and dimmer than the lobby. My room was at the far end, past a housekeeping closet and a fire exit door with a green sign. The key was an old metal one attached to a plastic block, not a card. The room was basic. Bed, TV, side table, small desk, one window with dusty curtains, bathroom with a bucket under the sink. I checked behind the curtains because my mother's voice lives in my head. Nothing. I pushed the chair under the door handle, not because I was scared exactly, but because I was in a new place, and that's what my father always did in hotels. I plugged in my phone. It didn't charge. The socket near the bed was loose. I tried the desk socket. Nothing. The bathroom shaver socket worked for 2 seconds, then stopped. My phone stayed at 6%. I called reception from the room phone. The same young man answered. "Yes, sir. Sockets aren't working in 407. 1 minute. I send electrician." "At 1 in the morning?" "He is here." That bothered me more than it should have. Hotels have night staff. Maintenance people exist. But something about how ready he was made me look at the chair under the handle. "No, it's okay," I said. "Morning is fine." "Your phone charging?" I said morning is fine. A pause. Then he said, "As you like." I sat on the edge of the bed and listened. The room was quiet for maybe 30 seconds. Then the landline rang. I didn't pick it up. It rang 6 times and stopped. A minute later, there was a knock. Not loud. 3 polite taps. I didn't move. "Sir," a voice said. "Electrician." I stood slowly and went near the door without touching the chair. I said morning. Reception sent. Morning. He tried the handle. The chair held it. It wasn't a violent try. Just a small downward press, like checking whether I had locked it properly. Then silence. I waited with my hand over my mouth, not for quiet, but to keep myself from breathing too loudly. After a few seconds, footsteps moved away down the hall. I looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. My phone was at 5%. I turned on battery saver and opened the hotel booking app to find the property number. Before I could, a message came in from an unknown number. "Sir, please come reception. Issue with ID." I stared at it. Then another message. Bring original CNC. Copy not clear. I had given them my original at the desk. They had returned it. The wording wasn't impossible, just wrong. Why text me from a personal number instead of calling the room? How did they have my number? Booking, I guessed. Still, I didn't answer. Then my phone received a voice note. It came through WhatsApp from the same unknown number. The profile photo was blank. I don't usually play voice notes from strangers, but the first words appeared in the transcription preview before I pressed anything. Sir, door lock has problem. I played it on low volume. A man's voice, not the receptionist's, said, Sir, door lock has problem from outside. Don't lock. We need fix now. I stopped the note. Outside, somewhere near the far end of the hall, a door clicked. The fire exit door. I went to the window. It opened to a narrow view of the back lane and another building wall. Too high to climb. No balcony. For the first time that night, I let myself think the whole sentence. I might have been put in this room on purpose. I opened my laptop bag and took out the charging cable, then remembered the sockets were dead. My laptop had some charge. I connected my phone to it. The phone started charging slowly. That little battery symbol felt like someone had handed me a weapon. I called my manager. No answer. I called the company driver who was supposed to pick me up in the morning. No answer. I called my older cousin in Islamabad. It rang, then cut. The landline rang again. I picked it up this time but said nothing, breathing on the other end. Then the receptionist's voice. Sir, please don't make issue. Just come down. We change room. I'm fine. Room 407 has wiring problem. You said lock problem. A pause. He hung up. That small mistake cleared my head more than any loud threat would have. Wiring. Lock. ID. Every reason changed, but the goal stayed the same. Open the door or leave the room. I looked around for something I could use. The room had no heavy lamp, no kettle, no second chair. The bathroom had a plastic bucket and a metal mug. I filled the bucket with water, then felt stupid and set it by the door anyway. The hallway outside stayed quiet. At 1:34, my phone buzzed again. Another unknown message. Sir, check out now. Booking canceled. Below it was a photo. It showed a printed page with my booking details. My full name, phone number, company name, arrival note. In the margin, someone had written in blue pen, alone late bus for 107 phone low. I stared at that line until the words stopped looking like words. That printed page should not have existed in a driver's hands, or a fake electrician's hands, or anyone's hands outside the hotel system. And the note about my phone was from the car. Rashid had seen me checking the battery. He had told someone, or someone had told him before I arrived. My fear changed shape. It became practical. The fire exit was outside my room, about 15 steps away. The main lift was farther down, near reception cameras if there were any. Going downstairs quietly might mean walking into them. Staying in the room meant waiting until they decided to force it. Then I noticed the old wall panel near my door. A hotel fire alarm call point, red plastic, with a cracked clear cover. Beside it was a small speaker grill for announcements. I had seen a similar setup in school during drills. I opened my room door as quietly as possible. The chair scraped a little when I moved it. I froze. No footsteps. I slipped into the hallway with my room key in my fist. The corridor smelled faintly of damp carpet. At the far end near the lift, a man stood half hidden by the service closet. Not the receptionist, the fake electrician. He was holding a toolbox in one hand. He saw me at the same time I saw him. For 1 second, neither of us moved. Then he started walking toward me. Not fast, just steady. I stepped backward toward the fire alarm panel. He lifted one hand, palm out, like he was calming an animal. Sir, no problem. I didn't answer. Cool me. Reception. He was close enough now that I could see the toolbox wasn't latched. Something metal shifted inside it. I flipped up the cracked plastic cover on the fire alarm and pressed the button. Nothing happened. The man smiled. Then I realized it wasn't a button. It was a pull-down lever, stiff with dust. I hooked my fingers under it and yanked. The alarm screamed through the hallway. The man's smile vanished. Doors opened almost immediately. Not many, but enough. A man in a vest leaned out of 405, angry and half asleep. A family door opened near the lift. A child started crying. Lights flicked on under doors. The fake electrician turned away from me and started walking quickly toward the stairwell. I did not run to the lift. I ran to the wall phone near the service closet, the one marked for housekeeping. I grabbed it and pressed the only button with a label, lobby. The alarm was so loud I could barely hear the line connect. So I shouted, "There are fake staff on 4th floor. Call the real manager. Everyone come out." My voice came out through the hallway speaker system. That part one hadn't expected. Every room heard it. The fake electrician looked back at me from the stairwell door. For a moment, his face went empty with disbelief. Then he pushed through and disappeared. I stayed in the hallway because now people were looking. The man from 405 came fully out, holding his room key like a knife. "What happened?" he shouted. "Don't go with staff alone," I shouted back. Someone tried to get into my room. The family near the lift pulled their child back inside, but kept the door open. More doors opened. The alarm kept screaming. Then the elevator dinged. 2 men came out. One was older, heavy-set, wearing a sweater over shower camise and a hotel badge clipped properly to his pocket. The other was the security guard from outside, now very awake. The older man shouted, "Who pulled alarm?" "I did," I said. The young receptionist came up behind them by the stairs, breathing hard. His neat hair had fallen over his forehead. He pointed at me. "Sir is confused. He refused maintenance." I held up my phone with the photo of the printed booking page and the handwritten notes. The older man took one look and turned to the receptionist. "Where did he get this?" The receptionist said nothing. That silence told everyone more than an explanation would have. The older man was the actual night manager. He had been asleep in a back office because the hotel was short-staffed. The young receptionist was a trainee on his 2nd week, not supposed to be alone at the desk. The electrician was not hotel staff. The manager had never authorized anyone to go to my room. He also said the lift did not stop working at 3. The sockets in my room were not reported faulty, and there was no issue with my ID. Police did come later, but they didn't rescue me. By then I was in the lobby with 6 other guests, the real manager, and a security guard who suddenly cared very much about his job. The receptionist was still there because the manager had locked the front glass door and taken him into the office. Rashid, the rideshare driver, was gone. They found the printed booking page in the small printer tray behind reception. It had been printed twice. One copy was the photo sent to me. The other was crumpled in the trash with the same handwritten notes, plus an amount written at the bottom, 18,000. I don't know if that was what they thought they could get from me, or what someone was being paid, or something else. The official explanation, the one I could repeat without people making faces, was attempted theft. They probably planned to get me out of the room, claim there was a booking issue, maybe move me somewhere without cameras, maybe take my bags, maybe force a payment. The manager kept saying it had never happened before. Maybe he believed that. Maybe he needed me to believe it. I changed hotels at 4 in the morning. My company driver finally called back at 6 and found me sitting in the lobby of a different, more expensive hotel, drinking tea I didn't want. My manager apologized and said the company would reimburse everything. I didn't care about the money by then. After that trip, I stopped using budget hotels booked by other people without calling the property myself first. I don't get into rides after the driver ends the trip. I carry a power bank. I ask for rooms near lifts, not far from them. I check whether the person behind a counter has a name tag, and I don't feel childish doing it. The thing I remember most is not the fake electrician or the alarm. It is the receptionist smiling at me with my details already in his mouth. The lobby was lit. The guard was outside. Other guests were sleeping behind thin walls. Everything looked public enough to be safe. It wasn't. Sometimes danger doesn't hide in dark corners. Sometimes it stands behind a counter, prints your name, and waits for you to be too tired to ask why. Story 4. I started working nights at a warehouse outside Columbus, Ohio, in January, when I was 19 and trying not to drop out of community college. My best friend, Caleb, got hired with me, which was the only reason I said yes to the schedule. The place was called Mid-River Fulfillment, a low brick building behind a car parts plant, and from 10 at night to 6 in the morning it felt like the whole county had gone quiet except for the forklifts and the heaters kicking on above the loading doors. I was alone a lot during that time, even with Caleb there. My dad had moved to Texas, my mom worked doubles at a nursing home, and I was embarrassed by how badly I needed the money. The first strange thing happened on our third night, and I noticed it right away, but I had a good reason not to make it a big deal. The manager, Brian, had warned us during training that Section C had unstable sensors after midnight. He said the cameras glitched, the motion alarms were oversensitive, and nobody was supposed to go back there until first shift checked it. So when the little yellow light blinked on the security monitor at 12:18, I just looked at Caleb and said, "That's the thing he meant." Caleb leaned over the desk and watched the screen. Section C was a row of tall shelving units with overflow stock wrapped in black plastic. The camera showed nothing moving. "Motion sensor says aisle 3, he said. Brian said ignore it. He also said don't fall asleep, and Luis sleeps in his truck every lunch. That was Caleb. He could never leave something alone. We'd been friends since 7th grade, back when he was the kid who opened every locked cabinet just to see what adults thought was important. I was the opposite. I needed the job, needed the hours, and needed Brian to think I was reliable. The second warning came a couple nights later. We were restocking packing tape near the front when something heavy shifted behind the wall that separated the main floor from Section C. It was not a dramatic crash. It was more like a pallet settling, a low wooden scrape followed by the soft click of cardboard bumping metal. Caleb froze with a box of tape in his hands. "You heard that? So did the sensors," I said. The monitor above the supervisor desk had lit up again. Aisle 3, then aisle 5, then aisle 2. Caleb stared at it like the building had personally insulted him. "Cameras are blank. Then the sensors are messed up. Boxes don't move from aisle 3 to 5 to 2. I gave him the look I used when he was about to turn a boring night into a story we'd have to explain to someone later. "We're not going in there." He did not answer, but he kept glancing toward the locked double doors. On Friday, a man I had never seen before came through the side entrance around 11:30. He wore a dark jacket with a reflective stripe and carried a clipboard. At first I thought he was from corporate or maintenance. He moved like he belonged there, not fast, not lost, just quiet. He nodded at Caleb. "You two the night guys?" Caleb said, "Yeah." The man looked at me a little longer than he looked at Caleb. "Brian tell you about Section C?" I did not like that question. Not because it was threatening. It was too specific, like he already knew what answer he wanted. "He said don't go in," I said. The man smiled without showing much of his teeth. "Good. System's touchy." Caleb asked, "Are you here to fix it?" Checking the report, he wrote something down. His clipboard had no company logo on it. That was the part one noticed. But the warehouse used so many temp contractors and outside maintenance guys that I let it sit in the back of my mind. People walked around that building all the time with plain hoodies and borrowed keys. He went into the break room, came out with a coffee, then disappeared toward receiving. Later, Caleb said, That guy knew your name. What? When he walked past me by the tape shelves, he said, Ryan's the careful one, right? I laughed because I did not want to hear how wrong it sounded. Brian probably told him. Brian doesn't know we're best friends. He knows we came in together. Caleb was quiet after that. The next week, the little things started stacking up. A pallet jack we had left near loading door 4 was parked outside Section C the next morning. Caleb's hoodie, the navy one with the white drawstrings, disappeared from the break room and then turned up on a chair by the supervisor desk. A printed shift schedule had our names highlighted in yellow, but someone had written beside mine, careful, slow to leave. Beside Caleb's name, someone had written, will check noises. I found it under a stack of packing slips. I stared at those words for maybe 10 seconds too long. Caleb came up behind me. What's that? I folded it before he could see everything. Nothing. Old schedule. He snatched it anyway. His face changed as he read it. Not scared exactly. Angry. Who wrote this? I don't know. Brian. Why would Brian write that? Caleb looked toward Section C. Because something's going on back there. That was the first time I stopped thinking of Section C as a glitchy part of the warehouse and started thinking of it as a place someone wanted us to notice. I should explain the layout because it matters. The front half of Mid-River had packing stations, offices, and the break room. The back half had 3 storage zones. Section A and B were open. Section C was behind double-fire doors with a keypad and a sliding metal cage on the inside, like a store gate. The official reason was expensive seasonal inventory. The unofficial reason was that nobody liked going there because the lights took forever to warm up and the aisles were narrow. On the night everything happened, we were short-staffed. Luis called out. Marisol, the dock lead, was there until 2, but she spent most of her shift outside with a truck driver whose paperwork was messed up. That left me and Caleb at the supervisor desk just after midnight, eating chips from the vending machine and pretending we weren't watching the camera grid. At 12:07, the first motion alert blinked. Aisle 3. Caleb did not say anything. He just stood. Don't, I said. He walked closer to the monitor. The camera showed the usual gray shelves, stacked boxes, and nothing else. Then a box slid from the second shelf to the floor. It did not fall straight. It moved outward slowly like someone had pulled it, then dropped. The camera flickered once and went still again. Caleb whispered there. I grabbed his sleeve. We're telling Marisol. She's outside. Then we wait. The alarm blinked again. Aisle 5. Caleb pulled away from me. I'm not losing this job because some guy's messing with us and Brian thinks we did it. That's not what's going to happen. You don't know that. Before I could stop him, he went to the keypad and punched in the code. Brian had given it to us for emergencies, and Caleb had watched him enter it enough times to memorize it. The double doors clicked. Caleb. He opened one door and looked back. 2 minutes. Watched the monitor. Then he slipped inside. I stood there with my phone in my hand, already halfway to calling him, even though he was maybe 30 feet away. On the monitor, I saw him step into aisle 3. Navy hoodie, gray beanie, white sneakers. He raised one hand toward the camera like, see? Fine. The screen flickered again. Then another Caleb walked into the frame from the opposite end of the aisle. Same hoodie, same beanie, same shoulders, same slow, familiar walk. For half a second, my mind refused to do anything with what I was seeing. Then the first Caleb turned his head slightly, like he heard someone behind him. I hit the call button on the desk phone for the warehouse intercom. My fingers slipped once. Caleb, get out, I said, and my voice came out thin through the speakers. Both figures on the screen stopped. The one closest to the camera looked up. His face was not Caleb's. It was close enough in the bad lighting to fool you from across a room. Same build, same clothes, same angle of the head. But his face was older, flatter, with a trimmed beard and eyes that did not move like Caleb's. The real Caleb backed into a shelf. The imposter raised one finger to his mouth, not in a dramatic way. More like he was reminding a kid to be quiet in a library. I ran. I don't mean I ran bravely into Section C. I ran toward the loading dock because I knew Marisol was there, and because the warehouse floor was too wide and too empty for me to do anything alone. My shoes slapped the concrete, and every sound seemed to repeat off the shelves. Marisol was by door 6, holding a clipboard and arguing with the truck driver. "Someone's in Section C," I said. "With Caleb." She looked at my face and did not ask the kind of questions adults usually ask first. She dropped the clipboard and ran with me. By the time we reached the Section C doors, one of them was open only a few inches. The lights inside were flickering on, slow and pale. I could hear Caleb breathing before I saw him. Fast, trapped breaths. "Caleb!" Marisol shouted. From inside, someone said, "He's fine." Not Caleb. Not even close, now that we were at the door. Marisol stepped in front of me. She was maybe 5'4", but she had worked docks for 20 years and had the kind of voice that made people move before they thought about it. "Come out where I can see you," she said. There was a pause. Then the fake Caleb appeared at the end of the aisle, wearing my friend's hoodie. He had one hand tucked inside the front pocket. Behind him, Caleb stood frozen near the shelf, his mouth open, his face white under the warehouse lights. The man smiled at Marisol. "Maintenance." "No, you're not." He took one step forward. Marisol grabbed the sliding cage door and yanked it across the entrance. It screamed on the track, metal against metal, and slammed between us and him. She snapped the padlock through the latch, so fast I barely saw her do it. The man stopped on the other side. For a second, all 4 of us just stared through the wire mesh. Then he looked at me and said, "Careful, one." Marisol shoved me backward. "Office. Now." I didn't want to leave Caleb, but she was already pulling the radio from her belt. "Caleb," she barked through the cage, walked to my voice. "Don't look at him." Caleb moved like someone crossing thin ice. The man did not grab him. He just watched. That was somehow worse. He seemed annoyed, not panicked, like this had become inconvenient. When Caleb reached the gate, Marisol unlocked it just enough to drag him through, then slammed it shut again. The man lunged then, not wildly, just fast. His fingers hit the mesh near Caleb's shoulder. Caleb made a sound I had never heard from him before. We got the cage locked again. Marisol backed us out through the double doors and shut them. Then she wedged a metal stock cart under the handles. Only after that did she call 911. The man did not bang or yell. That silence stuck with me. He was locked inside Section C, and he waited like waiting was something he was good at. The police did come, but they were not the reason we got away. By the time they arrived, Marisol had already gotten us into the front office, shut the door, and put a filing cabinet against it. The officers went in through the rear service door with Brian, who had driven over in sweatpants and a jacket. They did not find him inside Section C. They found the back emergency exit propped open with a roll of packing straps. Outside in the gravel, there were shoe prints leading to the drainage ditch behind the building. Caleb sat in the break room with a blanket around his shoulders, even though it wasn't cold. He kept staring at his own hoodie, which Brian had taken from the man and put in a plastic bag. The guy had stolen it from the break room earlier in the week. Inside one pocket was a folded copy of our night schedule and a warehouse floor map with Section C circled. Brian kept saying, "I don't understand," until Marisol snapped, then stopped saying it. The proof, at least the proof I could understand, came the next morning. Brian called every contractor and maintenance company Mid-River used. Nobody had sent anyone that week. No one matched the name the man had given at the front desk, because he hadn't signed in at all. He had used an old side door code from before the company changed security vendors. Brian also checked employee records going back years. No one with that face, that name, or that description had ever worked there. But he knew the building. He knew the cameras. He knew which sensors would pull Caleb deeper into Section C. And he knew us well enough to predict who would stay back and who would go in. Caleb quit before sunrise. I quit with him. Neither of us finished the shift. For a while after that, Caleb would not talk about what he saw in the aisle before I hit the intercom. Months later, he told me the man had been standing behind a pallet, wearing his hoodie, and whispering his name in a voice that almost sounded like mine. Not perfect. Almost. That was what scared him into freezing. Not the face. Not even the clothes. It was hearing someone copy the way your best friend says your name. Mid-River closed Section C for 2 weeks, then reopened like nothing had happened. Brian offered me my job back with a raise. I told him no. I work at a grocery store now, mornings only. Caleb works at an auto shop where the whole floor is visible from the office. I still don't like routines. I don't park in the same spot twice if I can help it. I don't wear the same jacket to work every day. When someone knows too much about where you'll be and what you'll do, it doesn't feel like attention. It feels like a set of instructions written for the wrong person to follow. Story 5. The first thing I noticed was the empty space beside me in a picture from my 9th birthday. I was sitting at our kitchen table in Omaha, Nebraska, wearing a paper crown and holding up a slice of chocolate cake. There was a chair pulled close to mine, angled toward me like someone had just been sitting there, but nobody was in it. I was 24 when I found that photo, living alone after a breakup and putting together a birthday slideshow for myself because my sister said it would be funny and healing, which sounded awful enough that I agreed. I was a substitute teacher then, bouncing between middle schools, broke enough to check my bank app before buying gas. The reason I didn't react right away was simple. Old family photos are messy. People step out of frame. Kids move. Cameras blur. But then I found another picture from 5th grade at the zoo, where my arm was around nothing. Then another from a backyard sleepover, where a sleeping bag was laid out between me and my cousin, zipped closed and empty. Every place I remembered Sam being, the photo either missed him, blocked him, or turned him into a smear near the edge. Sam Wheeler was my oldest friend, at least in the way I remembered my childhood. He was the kid who showed up after school and knew when my parents were fighting without me saying it. He liked grape soda, hated dogs, and always wore a green windbreaker, even when it was too warm. I could hear his laugh clearly. I could remember him walking beside me to the creek behind the elementary school. But when I texted my sister a photo and asked, "Do you remember Sam?" she wrote back, "The imaginary friend?" I thought she was being annoying, because that is one of her main talents. Then I called my mom. She was in Arizona visiting her cousin, and I could hear dishes clinking in the background. "Do you remember Sam Wheeler?" I asked. There was a pause. "From where?" "From when we lived on Marcy Street." Another pause, longer this time. "You talked about a Sam." "Yeah, my best friend." "Honey, I remember you talking about him." "I don't remember him being in the house." "He slept over." "No," she said, and her voice got careful. "I don't think he did." I laughed because I didn't know what else to do. "Mom, I have memories of him eating breakfast at our table. I remember setting 2 plates sometimes because you asked me to. That made the apartment seem quieter. I spent the rest of the night on my living room floor, surrounded by photo albums and my laptop, searching for Sam Wheeler. Facebook, Instagram, old school pages, alumni lists. Nothing matched. I found 3 Sam Wheelers in Nebraska, all the wrong ages. I searched our elementary school's public archive, and then the high school yearbooks people had scanned online. No Sam. I emailed the school district the next morning from my work account, saying I was helping with reunion information. I felt stupid doing it, but not as stupid as I felt sitting in my apartment whispering his name like I was testing whether it still meant anything. A woman from records called me 2 days later. She was polite but confused. We don't have a Samuel Wheeler enrolled in that time period at Hawthorne Elementary or Morton Middle, she said. Could it have been a different last name? I almost said no. Then I realized I didn't know. I remembered Wheeler because Sam told me it was his name. I didn't remember seeing it on a backpack, a paper, a birthday card, anything real. That was when I knew something in my memory had edges I had never touched. The first message came that evening. It was from a Facebook profile with no picture and the name Sam W. The message said, "Still making a big deal out of your birthday?" My hands went cold before the rest of me caught up. I typed, "Who is this?" The answer came back fast. "You know." I stared at those two words until my phone dimmed. I could have blocked him. I nearly did. But loneliness makes you curious in a way that feels like courage at the time. I had spent months after my breakup feeling like everyone had paired off into lives where they were needed. Then here was a person from childhood, real or not, reaching through a screen and saying he remembered me. So I wrote, "Prove it." He sent a picture of a cracked blue marble. I still had that marble. It was in a box in my closet. Sam and I had buried it under a loose brick near the creek when we were 10. We called it buried treasure because we were kids and kids can make trash important. The next message said, "You cried when your dad forgot the science fair." No one knew that except me and Sam, or someone who had been watching. I asked where he was. He wrote, "Close." I didn't sleep much that night. The next day after school, I drove to Marcy Street. My old neighborhood had changed in the way all neighborhoods change when you leave them alone long enough. The maple trees were bigger. The beige ranch house where we lived had blue shutters now. The corner store was a vape shop. Sam's house was 3 doors down from ours, or at least that was what I remembered. It had been a narrow 2-story rental with a sagging porch and a chain-link fence. The place was still there, but it looked empty. Yellow grass, mailbox hanging open, dust on the front windows. I sat in my car for 15 minutes, feeling like every person walking a dog was watching me. I had no plan that made sense. Knock, call the police, and say a childhood friend who might not exist had messaged me on Facebook? Tell my mom I was standing outside a vacant house because of a marble? Then an older woman came out of the house next door carrying recycling. I recognized her after a second. Mrs. Tully. She used to give out full-size candy bars on Halloween. I got out and said her name. She squinted. Ben. Hearing my name from that street made me feel 12 again. I asked if she remembered the Wheelers. The who? The family that lived here. They had a son, Sam. Mrs. Tully's face changed. Not recognition exactly. More like she had found an old bruise. No Wheelers, she said. There was a man named Harlan. Rented rooms out to people sometimes. Not good people. A kid lived there, I said. My age. She shook her head slowly. There was a boy sometimes. Older than you. Thin kid. Green jacket. He wasn't Harlan's. I don't know whose he was. How much older? I don't know. Teenager maybe. She looked at the empty house. Your mother told you to stay away from that place. No, she didn't. Mrs. Tully gave me a sad look that made me hate the whole conversation. Maybe she tried. That should have been enough to send me home. Instead, I waited until she went inside, then walked around the side of the empty house. The back door was not locked. The knob turned under my hand with a dry little click. I stood there for a moment, listening. A furnace rattled somewhere, or maybe it was only pipes. The house smelled like dust, old carpet, and damp wood. I stepped inside. The kitchen was empty except for a folding chair and a stack of takeout containers in the sink. Not old containers. Recent ones. A white plastic bag from a grocery store sat on the counter with a receipt sticking out. The date was from that morning. I thought about leaving then. I even turned toward the door. My phone buzzed. The message from Sam W. said, "You always pause in kitchens." I stopped moving. A floorboard creaked overhead. I did not run. That surprises people when I tell it. but running would have meant admitting I had seen the message and heard the sound. Some part of me understood that whoever was upstairs wanted a reaction. So I locked my phone, put it in my pocket, and walked slowly through the hall like I was only looking around. There were no curtains. Dust lay thick on the stairs except for a narrow path worn down the middle. Upstairs, the first bedroom was empty. The second had a mattress on the floor and a duffel bag beside it. The third bedroom was the one I remembered as Sam's, though I couldn't have told you why. The walls were covered with photos of me. Not just old ones, recent ones. Me leaving the middle school where I worked. Me outside the gas station on Dodge Street. Me carrying laundry into my apartment building. Me sitting in my car after my breakup, face turned toward the windshield, crying in a parking lot I thought was empty. There were childhood photos too, but they were not family pictures. They were taken from yards, across streets, through windows. In one, I was 8 years old and asleep on a living room couch. In another, I was standing in the creek behind the school, holding up the blue marble. Beside the photos were pages taped to the wall. My work schedule, my sister's address, my mom's old phone number, a list titled Things Ben Still Does. Checks driver's side mirror before unlocking. Uses self-checkout. Leaves porch light on all night. Doesn't answer unknown calls unless text first. Still scared of basements. At the bottom of one page, someone had written, "Make him remember properly." I heard the floor creak behind me. I did not turn around. My phone buzzed again in my pocket. A voice from somewhere behind the half-open door said, "You found it." It was not a ghost voice. It was just a man's voice. Soft, almost shy. I looked at the wall, at a photo of myself at 10 years old, smiling toward someone outside the frame. "Sam," I said. He made a small sound that might have been a laugh. "I tried so hard," he said. "You were alone all the time." I kept my face pointed at the wall. My mind was working in small, plain pieces. Door behind me. Stairs to the left. Back door unlocked. He knows I know. Don't make him prove anything. I forced myself to sound tired instead of terrified. "I need a minute." He did not answer. "I'm not mad," I said. Still nothing. I turned slowly, but not all the way toward him. I looked past the doorframe, not at his face. I saw part of him in the hallway mirror. Older than me by years, maybe mid-30s, thin, with dark hair and a green windbreaker that looked too small in the shoulders. He was standing between me and the stairs. "I remembered you," he said. "I know. You forgot wrong." I nodded like that made sense. "I need to get the marble from my car." That was the lie my brain handed me. It was not clever. It was just connected to something he cared about. He shifted in the hallway. "You kept it?" "Yeah," I said. "Of course I did." He stepped back half a foot. That was enough. I walked toward the stairs, not fast. Every nerve in me wanted to bolt, but I made myself move like I had permission. At the top step, I felt him behind me. Not touching, close enough that I could hear his breathing. When I reached the kitchen, I almost lost it because the back door looked farther away than before. I opened it, stepped outside, and kept walking across the yard. "Ben," he called softly. I lifted one hand without turning around, like I was saying, "1 second." Then I got in my car, locked the doors, and drove away with both hands shaking so badly I missed the turn onto the main road. I did not go to the police that night. I know some people won't understand that, but I had broken into an empty rental. I had no photos of the wall, no recording, no clear name. All I had was a Facebook message thread from an account that disappeared before midnight. What I did have was the schedule page. It had stuck to my sleeve when I brushed against the wall. I found it on the passenger seat after I parked outside a Target and cried in a way that felt less like sadness than my body dumping out noise. The next day, I showed it to my sister. She read it twice, then said, "You're staying with me." I did for 3 weeks. My mom finally told me what she remembered. When I was little, there was an older boy near Marcy Street who kept showing up when I played outside. He said he was my friend. My parents thought he was lonely at first. Then he started appearing in the yard when no one had invited him, and once my mom found him standing in our hallway while I was asleep on the couch. My parents argued about calling someone, but the boy vanished before they could figure out whose responsibility he was. After a while, I stopped mentioning him. Except I didn't stop. I just turned him into Sam Wheeler, my best friend, because that was easier than understanding why a lonely teenager wanted to be around a little kid. I deleted Facebook. I changed schools the next semester. My sister helped me move to a different apartment with a locked lobby and cameras that actually worked. I don't post where I work now. I don't make birthday slideshows. A month after I moved, a printed photo arrived in my mailbox with no return address. It showed me and Sam at the creek, both of us younger, both smiling. I was holding the blue marble. His face was turned away just enough that you couldn't see it clearly. On the back, in careful handwriting, it said, "See? I was there." Maybe the photo was real. Maybe he took it with a timer. Maybe he made it later. I don't care anymore. I spent years thinking every strange feeling needed an explanation before I was allowed to leave. Now I know better. Sometimes the safest thing you can do is walk out while the person behind you still thinks you're coming back. Story 6. The man was already beside our table when I looked up from my coffee. I was 23 on a weekend trip near Asheville, North Carolina, with my best friend, Hiba, and we had stopped at a crowded cafe because our motel room smelled like bleach and damp carpet. The place was normal in that busy Saturday way, with students on laptops, a baby crying near the door, and 2 baristas calling out names over the espresso machine. I was alone in a different kind of way that month. I had just finished nursing school exams, my brain was scraped clean from studying, and I kept saying yes to things because I didn't want Hiba to think I was boring now. The man looked maybe 40, with a clean jacket and a baseball cap pulled low. When he said, "I finally found you too," I assumed he had us confused with someone else. I did not react much because people mistake me for other people all the time, and in a public cafe, weird usually stays harmless. Hiba gave him the polite smile she uses on strangers and said, "Sorry, I think you have the wrong table." He looked at her, then at me. "Nor and Hiba. My real name is Nora, but my grandmother called me Nor when I was little, and Hiba is the only friend who still does sometimes." Hearing him say both together made the air around the table seem thinner. "Do we know you?" I asked. He glanced at the empty chair beside us, like he expected to be invited. "You left before I could explain." Hiba's smile disappeared. "Left where?" "The red house," he said. Neither of us moved. There are childhood secrets that aren't crimes exactly, but they still sit in you like something unfinished. When we were 12, Hiba and I went into an abandoned house near my aunt's old place in Tennessee. It had faded red siding, broken porch steps, and weeds taller than the mailbox. We had dared each other to go in because we were bored and trying to seem braver than we were. Inside, we heard crying from upstairs. Not a TV, not an animal. A person crying, soft and steady. We ran. We never told anyone, partly because we weren't supposed to be there, partly because we were ashamed of leaving. Over the years, we convinced each other it was a phone ringing strangely, wind through a pipe, anything except what it sounded like. The man at the cafe said, "You heard her." Hiba stood so fast her chair legs scraped the floor. "Don't talk to us," she said. People looked over. Not enough to help, just enough to notice noise. The man raised both hands slightly. "I'm not here to scare you." "You failed," I said. He leaned closer, and his voice stayed calm. She waited. Hiba grabbed her bag. I grabbed mine. We walked out without finishing our drinks. He did not follow us right away. That made it worse. He watched through the window while we crossed the street to Hiba's car. Then he lifted one hand like he was saying goodbye. In the car, Hiba locked the doors and sat with the engine off. "How does he know that?" she whispered. "I don't know. You told someone." "I didn't. You had to." I wanted to be offended, but I was thinking the same thing about her. We drove back to the motel in silence. It was one of those roadside places with outside doors, a soda machine, and a lobby that closed at 10. Our room was on the second floor. Hiba checked the parking lot before we got out. The man from the cafe was not there. In the room, we did what scared people do when they want fear to turn into a puzzle. We searched online. Read abandoned house crying upstairs, Tennessee. Nothing useful. We added the name of my aunt's old town. We found a real estate listing from years ago, some county tax records, and one blog post by a local history hobbyist about abandoned houses in the area. There was a picture of the red house. Same porch. Same upstairs window broken in the corner. Hiba clicked through the photos with her jaw tight. "Read the comments," I said. There were only 6. The newest one was from a week earlier. "Some girls came here in 2014 and ran. They know why. No name. No profile picture." Hiba closed the laptop. "We're not doing this," she said. But neither of us slept. Around 2 in the morning, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Still pretending you don't remember?" A photo came through next. It was taken from behind 2 girls standing in a dirty hallway. One had a purple backpack. One wore a yellow ribbon around her ponytail. I had owned that backpack. Hiba had worn that ribbon all summer because she saw it in a music video and thought it made her look older. The picture was grainy, but there was no doubt. It was us inside the red house. Hiba looked at it for a long time. Then she said, "Someone was in there with us." That sentence changed everything. The crying upstairs had been one thing. A person close enough to photograph us from behind was another. By morning, Hiba had decided we were going home. I agreed until we started packing, and the motel phone rang. Not my cell. The beige room phone bolted to the nightstand. Hiba and I stared at it. I picked up because not picking up felt worse. A woman's recorded voice said, "Front desk." Then a click. No message. No live person. Just the motel's automated voice, or something imitating it. I called the front desk from my cell. The clerk said he hadn't called us. He sounded half asleep and irritated. When we went downstairs to check out, there was a folded local map tucked under Hiba's windshield wiper. A circle had been drawn around a road outside Asheville, not Tennessee. Written beneath it were the words, "Wrong red house." That was why we went. I know how that sounds. It sounds like the moment in a story where people stop acting like people. But we were not trying to solve a mystery for fun. We were 2 exhausted women realizing that someone had followed us, knew where we slept, and had a picture from a day we had buried for 11 years. The map felt like a threat, but also like a chance to understand where the threat was coming from before we drove 3 hours with him possibly behind us. We told the motel clerk where we were going without telling him why. Hiba took a picture of the map and sent it to her older brother. I shared my phone location with my sister. Then we drove in daylight. The road on the map led into a wooded area past a wedding venue and a closed produce stand. The house was set back behind a sagging fence. It was red too, but darker than the one from childhood, with black shutters and a side porch half covered by vines. There was a white van parked far down the road, partly hidden by trees. Hiba saw it first. "Same guy?" "I don't know. Don't park close." We left the car near the produce stand and walked up the road. Birds were loud in the trees. Somewhere behind us, music thumped faintly from the wedding venue, where people were setting up white chairs under a tent. That sound helped. It made the whole place feel less sealed off. The front door of the house was open. We stood on the porch for a full minute. "This is stupid," Hiba said. "Yes." "We can leave." "Yes." Neither of us moved. Inside, the house smelled like old wood and dry leaves. Sunlight came through holes in the boards over the windows. The first room was empty except for a broken chair and beer cans. The floor had footprints and dust, some old, some fresh. Then I saw the wall. Our names were carved into the plaster near the stairs. Nora. Hiba. June 18th, 2014. The date was right. Hiba touched my arm hard. From upstairs came a soft crying sound. Exactly the same rhythm I remembered. Soft. Steady. Almost tired. But this time, I noticed what 12-year-old me hadn't. It looped. Every few seconds, the breath caught in the same place. "That's a recording," I whispered. A board creaked behind us. The man from the cafe stood in the front doorway. He looked different in the house. Smaller, maybe, or just less normal without the cafe around him. "You came back," he said. Hiba stepped toward the stairs without thinking, away from him. I grabbed her wrist. "No," I said. The man's eyes moved to our joined hands. "You always run together." He took one step inside. I looked around fast. The front door was behind him. The hallway to the right led toward the kitchen. There was a narrow service door under the stairs, the kind old houses have for storage or basement access. It was open a few inches, and I could feel cool air from it. The crying continued upstairs. The man said, "Don't you want to know who it was?" Hiba's voice shook. "Who are you?" He smiled like that question bored him. "Someone who remembers better than you." Behind him, through the open front door, I could see the white tents at the wedding venue far down the road. People in dress clothes were moving between cars. Close enough to be real. Too far to hear us, unless we made the right kind of noise. My hand found something on the broken table beside me. An old metal serving bell, probably left by someone using the house for junk storage. I picked it up. The man looked at it and almost laughed. Then I threw it as hard as I could through the front window. The glass didn't shatter like in movies. It cracked and broke in a flat, ugly burst. The bell hit the porch outside and clanged down the steps. People at the wedding venue turned. The man twisted to look. Hiba moved first. She shoved the broken chair into his legs. Not hard enough to hurt him badly, but enough to make him stumble into the hallway. I grabbed the service door and pulled it open. It led into a narrow side passage that smelled like damp stone, with a second door at the far end. He recovered and lunged toward us. Hiba and I pushed the hallway door shut together. There was an old hook latch on our side, loose but still attached. I dropped it into place. The door shook once from the other side. "Open it," he said, not shouting. Calm. That was worse. The door shook again, harder. I spotted the source of the crying on the stairs, a small black speaker tucked behind the banister. I grabbed it, ran to the broken window, and threw it onto the porch. The crying became loud outside, tinny and wrong, spilling into the afternoon. People at the wedding venue were looking now. A man in a suit started walking toward the road. Then two more followed. The service door banged behind us. Hiba grabbed my arm. "Run." We went out through the kitchen and onto the side porch. Vines caught my sleeve and tore it at the shoulder. We stumbled down into the weeds and ran toward the road, not looking back until we were halfway to the produce stand. The man was on the front porch. He did not chase us. He stood there while the wedding guests shouted from the road. One of them had a phone out. Another kept yelling, "Hey, you okay?" That crowd was the only reason he stayed where he was. Not kindness, not guilt, just too many witnesses too quickly. We got to Hiba's car and drove straight to the sheriff's office in the next town. The officers took a report, but by the time anyone went back to the house, he was gone. The speaker was gone too. The carved names were still there. So was the broken glass. They asked if we knew him. We said no. They asked why he would target us. We had no answer that sounded sane. The message thread became the thing I kept staring at afterward. The first unknown text had arrived at 2:13 in the morning. But when I opened the photo details later, The attached image showed a sent time of 2:10, 3 minutes before the text that introduced it. Hibba's phone showed the same mismatch. The deputy said it could be a network delay or spoofing. He said people can fake numbers and timestamps if they know what they're doing. That explanation did not comfort me. Hibba's brother drove down and followed us home. We changed our numbers the next week. I stopped using my grandmother's nickname online. Hibba deleted years of public posts. I still check motel phones when I enter a room, even if I never use them. The abandoned house from our childhood was real. The second red house was real. The man was real. What I don't know is how he connected us to a day when we were 12, or why he had waited until we were grown to make us hear that crying again. The last message came 3 days later, from another unknown number. You ran again. Attached was the same photo of us as children inside the house, taken from behind. This time, I noticed a strip of mirror on the left edge of the frame. In it, small and blurry, was the shape of someone standing behind the camera. I deleted the message, then recovered it, then deleted it again. Some fears arrive before the explanation does. I used to think that made them unreliable. Now I think it means some part of you has already understood the room before your mind is ready to name what's in it. Story 7. I still think about the night Jenna and I sat on the carpet of a motel room outside Rutland, Vermont, passing my old laptop between us like it was something fragile. I was 27 then, working as a paralegal in Chicago, and Jenna was teaching 4th grade in Columbus. We had flown in for our old school's closing weekend, partly because we wanted to see the place before it was sold, and partly because we were both in a lonely stretch of our lives and thought nostalgia might feel harmless for once. The first strange thing was simple. In a video from a sleepover when we were 13, there were 3 girls laughing on Jenna's old pink sleeping bag, not 2. The third girl sat between us with her knees tucked under a hoodie that had the St. Bridget's crest on it. She had dark blonde hair cut unevenly at her shoulders, and she kept looking at the camera like she was waiting for us to say something. In the video, 13-year-old me leaned over and yelled, "Riley, stop making that face," and Jenna laughed so hard she fell out of frame. Neither of us remembered a Riley. Not in that room, not in our class, not at our table, not in the 5 years we spent at St. Bridget's. At first, there was a normal explanation for not panicking over it. Old school videos are messy. People show up in them who were important for 1 semester, and then disappear from memory. We both had different last names then, different hair, different voices, and a lot of things from that time had been blurred by distance. Jenna said maybe Riley was somebody's cousin visiting for a weekend. I said maybe she was in another grade. We were tired from travel, and the motel heater made a clicking sound every few minutes, and outside our room the parking lot was mostly empty, except for 1 salt-stained pickup under a yellow light. We watched the video again. It wasn't just that Riley was there, it was the way we acted around her. I handed her a can of Sprite without looking, like I knew exactly where she'd be. Jenna pulled a blanket over Riley's shoulders when she coughed. At one point Riley whispered something, and young me turned to the camera and said, "We promised we weren't talking about it." The room went very quiet after that. Jenna opened her old Gmail first. She had kept everything, thousands of messages from 7th grade onward. We searched Riley. Nothing. Then she searched Ree, then Beck, then Don't Tell, laughing a little each time like she was trying to make it feel stupid. On the 4th search, a thread came up from 2012 with the subject line, "After Lights Out." The sender name was Riley B. There were 26 messages in the thread. The first one said, "Do you think Ms. Avery saw us?" Another said, "I'm not going back there if she asks." One from Jenna read, "Claire said we can say you were with us all night." I stared at my own name in that sentence until the letters stopped looking like letters. I searched my laptop after that. I found old chat logs in a folder I didn't remember making. Riley was everywhere in them. She complained about math homework. She asked Jenna to save her a seat. She sent me a picture of a bracelet made with 3 colors of string. The messages weren't dramatic. That somehow made them worse. They looked like a normal friendship, the kind that should have left dents in us. Jenna started texting people from our old class. It was late, almost 11 p.m., but teachers have an insane number of contacts saved, and she had everybody. Most people didn't answer. One girl, Paige, wrote back, "Why are you asking about her?" Jenna wrote, "We found some old stuff and don't remember." Paige's little typing dots appeared and vanished 3 times before she sent, "Please don't bring that up this weekend." We read it together, and I remember hearing the vending machine hum through the wall. The next morning, St. Bridget's looked smaller than I remembered. It sat on a hill above a Tulane road, all red brick, white trim, and leafless maple trees. The front lawn had temporary signs for the closing ceremony, and folding tables were set up inside the gym with yearbooks, sweatshirts, and old framed photos being sold for donations. A woman at the check-in table smiled too hard when she saw our names. "Claire Wallace and Jenna Porter," she said. "Class of 2015. She wore a volunteer badge that said Lauren Ellis. I knew the name before I knew the face. Lauren had been in our grade, one of those girls who was always near the center of a group, but never the loudest person in it. She looked almost exactly like her old yearbook picture, just sharper. "I didn't know you worked here," Jenna said. "Just helping with the closure," Lauren said. "Some of us stayed local." Her eyes moved between us, then to the laptop bag on my shoulder. Inside the gym, we asked 3 people about Riley Beck. One man from our grade, Drew, walked away while I was still talking. A woman named Hannah pressed her lips together and said, "I thought they told everyone not to use her name." When Jenna asked who they meant, Hannah looked at the volunteer table and said she needed to find her husband. That was the second thing that felt wrong. Nobody acted like Riley was imaginary. They acted like remembering her in public was rude. We found her in an old yearbook on a table near the stage. Riley Beck, 8th grade. Same uneven haircut. Same narrow smile from the video. Under her picture, someone had written in blue pen years ago, "Transferred." That one word bothered me more than it should have. Transferred was what schools wrote when they wanted to stop answering questions. Lauren appeared beside us while we were still staring at the page. "I heard you 2 were asking around," she said. Jenna closed the yearbook. "We're trying to remember someone." Lauren's smile didn't move. "The archives are open later for alumni. There might be class notebooks or advisory records in the north building. Most people don't bother with that stuff." "What time?" I asked. 7:30, she said. "After the dinner. I can let you in." There was no reason to distrust her yet. She was a former classmate volunteering at a school event. She knew the building, and we didn't. Still, I noticed she said, "I can let you in, not someone can." That afternoon we went back to the motel. Jenna called Paige, and this time Paige answered. She sounded like she was in a bathroom with the fan running. "Don't go anywhere alone with Lauren," she said. "Why?" Jenna asked. Paige didn't answer that directly. She said, "Lauren's mom was Ms. Avery." The name from the messages landed in the room without either of us saying anything. Paige kept her voice low. After Riley left, Lauren's mom got moved to another school. There were meetings. Parents signed things. We were kids. Nobody explained it right. "Left how?" I asked. Paige breathed in through her nose. Riley said Ms. Avery locked her in the old language room for lying. Not overnight or anything like that. Just long enough that she missed dinner and got scared. Riley told you 2 first. Then she was gone the next week. I looked at Jenna, and Jenna looked at the motel wall. Paige said, "Some of us talked about it. Some of us didn't." Lauren hated anyone bringing it up. After the call, Jenna started crying, but quietly, like she was embarrassed by it. I wasn't crying. I was looking at my hands because I suddenly remembered the smell of chalk dust and orange cleaner. I remembered a door with a narrow window, paper taped over it from the inside. I remembered Riley whispering, "You guys said you'd come back." The memories came in pieces, not like a movie, more like somebody sliding photos under a door. We almost didn't go back that night. That would have been the smart choice. But neither of us wanted to leave with half a memory and a video that made us feel like cowards. Also, Lauren hadn't threatened us. She had just offered to show us records. It is hard to explain how easy it is to keep acting normal when the bad part hasn't officially happened. The north building was behind the main school, connected by a glass hallway. It had been closed for years. The carpet smelled damp, and half the fluorescent lights were off. Lauren met us at the side entrance wearing a black coat over her volunteer shirt. She unlocked the door with a key ring that looked too heavy for a weekend helper. "Archives are downstairs," she said. "Careful, some lights don't work." We followed her down one flight. The basement hallway had old classroom chairs stacked against the walls. Lauren opened a storage room and pointed to boxes marked by graduation year. She said she had to check on another door and left us there with a buzzing light overhead. Jenna found the notebook in a box labeled Advisory 2011 to 2013. It was a black and white composition book, the kind every student had. Riley's name was written on the front in purple marker, but the handwriting inside was mine. We promised not to remember her. That sentence was on the first page. Below it, in Jenna's handwriting, was, "Because if we remember, we have to say we left." Neither of us spoke for a while. The notebook had only a few more pages. Names, dates, small notes. Riley cried in the hallway. Avery said she exaggerates. Lauren heard us talking. On the last page, someone had drawn 3 girls holding hands in front of a classroom door. The girl in the middle had no face. From somewhere above us, a door closed. Jenna whispered, "Claire." I had already seen it. On the desk in the corner of the storage room was a binder that did not belong with the old boxes. It was new, black, with a clear plastic sleeve on the front. Inside were printed pages. My LinkedIn profile. Jenna's school staff photo. Our flight from Chicago to Boston. Our rental car reservation. A screenshot from Jenna's Instagram story posted 2 days before, showing our motel key on the bedspread, the room number partly visible in the corner. The next pages were handwritten. Claire goes out alone for ice. 10:20 p.m. Jenna calls mother outside. 8:40 p.m. Both return to school if Riley notebook is mentioned. At the bottom of the last page, underlined twice, it said, "Room 214. Closed door after they enter." Room 214 was the old language room. I didn't make a sound. I just put the page back exactly where it had been. Jenna's face had gone pale, but she understood. The wrong move would have been running. Running makes noise. Running tells whoever is nearby that you know. So I picked up the notebook like I was still interested in it and said, too loudly, "Maybe we should ask Lauren if we can take pictures of this." Jenna nodded. Her mouth opened and closed once before she managed, "Yeah, for later." We stepped into the hallway. At the far end, around the corner, keys jingled. Lauren's voice floated down, calm and close. "Did you find something?" I held my phone to my ear, even though I hadn't called anyone. "Hi, yes," I said, making my voice brighter than it felt. "We're downstairs now." "No, we're coming up." "The deputy at the front entrance?" "Okay, tell him we'll be right there." The jingling stopped. Jenna and I walked. Not fast. Not slow. Just 2 women leaving a basement with an old notebook. Every step sounded too loud. At the stairwell, I saw the sign for the main lobby pointing right, the direction Lauren was in. To the left was a fire exit I remembered from drills, down a short hall behind the old music room. I turned left. "Claire?" Lauren called. "Be right back," I called over my shoulder. "Front door mix-up." We reached the fire exit. For one awful second I thought it would be chained. It wasn't. The alarm didn't sound when Jenna pushed it open, either, which made me think someone had disabled it ahead of time. Cold air hit us. We were outside behind the school, in the dark near the dumpsters and snow-crusted shrubs. Jenna slipped once on the pavement, and I caught her elbow without looking back. We didn't stop until we were in the rental car with the doors locked. Lauren came out of the side entrance about 30 seconds later. She stood under the light, looking around. She had no panic in her face, no anger. She looked inconvenienced. I drove without turning the headlights on until we were around the bend and down the hill. Then I pulled into the parking lot of a closed farm supply store and let Jenna breathe into her hands for a minute. We didn't go back to the motel. We drove 40 minutes to a chain hotel off the interstate and checked in under Jenna's middle name. The next morning, I photographed every page of the notebook and the binder pictures I had managed to take. I sent them to Paige and Hannah. Paige called me 5 minutes later, crying so hard I could barely understand her. She said Lauren had contacted her the week before, asking whether Jenna and I had ever admitted what happened. Hannah later told us Lauren had spent years blaming Riley for ruining her mother's career. Not because Riley had lied, but because Riley had told. The school sale ended that weekend. St. Bridget's closed for good 2 months later. I never found out what Lauren planned to do in room 214. Maybe she only wanted to scare us. Maybe she wanted a recording. Maybe she wanted us to say something she could use. I think about that binder more than anything else, because it means the frightening part didn't begin when we found the video. It began earlier, when she learned our schedules, our jobs, our motel, the tiny routines we posted without thinking. I changed a lot after that in ways that probably sound dull. I stopped tagging locations while I was still there. I removed old school information from my profiles. I don't post hotel rooms, boarding passes, or restaurants until days later, if at all. Jenna does the same. The notebook is in a file box in my closet, sealed in a plastic sleeve. Sometimes I think about Riley Beck and how easy it was for adults to make a group of children stop saying a name. But more often I think about Lauren standing under that side light, keys in her hand, looking almost bored. People like to say the past follows you. What I learned is worse. Sometimes a person follows your present until the past has a chance to open the door. Story 8. Every Friday after my closing shift, Marcus and I did laundry at a 24-hour place on Lorraine Avenue in Cleveland. I was 21, taking classes part-time at Cuyahoga Community College, and working nights loading delivery trucks. Marcus was my best friend from high school, and we both still lived with roommates who never cleaned anything. The laundromat was our routine: quarters, bad vending machine coffee, 1 hour of complaining, then cheap food if either of us had money. The first wrong thing came from a cracked blue phone we had bought earlier that day as a joke. We found it at a used electronics table in a weekend market outside a shuttered mall. The guy selling it had a folding chair, a cigar box full of chargers, and a cardboard sign that said cash only. I was broke enough to care about bargains and tired enough to think a weird old phone for $20 was entertainment. Marcus dared me to buy it because it still turned on. The seller smiled when he handed it over and said, "Careful. That one listens better than most people." It sounded like a line he used all day. We laughed. I paid cash. The phone had no SIM card. Marcus checked the tray right there. It had been factory reset, or at least it looked like it. There were no photos, no contacts, no apps except the basic ones, and some cheap weather widget that wouldn't load. We forgot about it until later, when we were at the laundromat and it buzzed on top of a dryer. Tomorrow Marcus spills tea at 8:12. No number. No sender name. Just the message on the screen. Marcus picked it up and turned it over like the answer might be printed on the case. "Dude, it's connected to Wi-Fi." The laundromat had free Wi-Fi, and the phone had asked to connect earlier. That was enough of an explanation in the moment. Old phones do strange things. Maybe a previous owner had some messaging app tied to it. Maybe it was a delayed notification. Marcus got tea from a gas station every morning before his warehouse shift, so the prediction wasn't even impressive. He spilled things constantly. The next day at 8:13, Marcus sent me a picture of brown tea all over his gray hoodie. Under it he wrote, "Okay, that's annoying." The second message came that night. Ethan forgets wallet. Marcus covers. Ethan says he'll pay back and doesn't. I laughed when I first read it because it was too normal. I had forgotten my wallet twice that month. Marcus saw it and said, "Your ghost phone knows you're cheap." "I'm not cheap," I said. "I'm recovering from being broke." "You've been recovering for 3 years." It was exactly the kind of argument we always had. Two guys who had known each other too long, poking the same bruises because we knew where they were. The next day, I forgot my wallet before lunch. Marcus paid for my sandwich and said, "I'm going to start charging interest." It stayed funny for almost a week. The messages came every night between 11:40 and midnight. Some were harmless. Marcus loses one glove. Ethan burns pizza. Marcus tells his mom he's busy and then plays Xbox. Then they got sharper. Ethan says he likes living alone but hates going home. Marcus pretends he didn't see the final notice on the table. Ethan thinks Marcus talks down to him when he's tired. I didn't show Marcus that last one right away. That was the first time the phone did what it was supposed to do. It made me hold something back. There were reasonable explanations we could lean on. Our lives were not private. We had group chats, social media, location sharing we forgot to turn off, roommates who talked, workplaces where everybody knew everybody. The messages were guesses dressed up as facts. A good scammer could do that. A bored seller with our names from somewhere could do that. We said all of this out loud, and because the alternative was too strange, we accepted it for another day. Then the phone predicted a fight that hadn't started yet. Tomorrow, Marcus asks why Ethan never answers when it matters. Ethan says Marcus likes feeling needed. That text came in while we were at the laundromat again, sitting under a TV mounted too high on the wall. Marcus read it over my shoulder. He looked at me and said, "Do you think that?" "No," I said too quickly. He leaned back, folded his arms, and stared at the washers. The next day, my car wouldn't start after class. I called Marcus, but he was already asleep after a 12-hour shift. I called twice. He didn't pick up. I got a ride from a guy in my building and told Marcus later it was fine. He heard the tone in my voice and said, "You act like I'm supposed to be on call." I said, "You act like saving people is your hobby." The words were out before I could make them smaller. We both went silent. The phone, dead on my desk, sat between us like it had been waiting. The next message changed everything. "Tomorrow, only one of you still trusts the other." I didn't tell Marcus. I put the phone in a drawer and went to bed. The next afternoon, it buzzed again even though it wasn't plugged in. When I opened the drawer, there were screenshots on the screen. They looked like messages from Marcus to a contact named Dire. In them, Marcus called me dead weight. He said I still owed him money. He said he kept me around because I made him look responsible. My face got hot. Not scared yet. Angry. I drove to Marcus's place and shoved the phone at him. He read the screenshots and said, "I didn't write that. They're from your account." "No, they're not." He opened his own phone and searched. There was no Dire. No thread. No deleted messages he could find. He looked more confused than guilty, which made me angrier because I wanted him to fit one emotion cleanly. The blue phone buzzed in my hand. Ask him why he deleted the app. Marcus stepped back. I didn't. Then another message came. He is lying better today. Marcus's roommate came out of the kitchen and asked if everything was okay. Neither of us answered. I wish I could say we were smart right away, but we weren't. We argued for almost an hour. Not because of the screenshots alone, but because the phone had spent days softening the ground under us. It knew old debt, little resentments, the ways we teased each other when we weren't joking. By the time we started asking practical questions, it had already done damage. Marcus finally took the phone and turned it over. There's no way it's getting these unless it's listening. Through what? I asked. He pointed around my apartment. Through that? Through your Wi-Fi. Through whatever you connected it to. You bring it everywhere. We took it to a phone repair place near the market where we bought it. The guy behind the counter opened it and frowned. This isn't factory, he said. Inside, taped under the back casing, was a thin black piece with a tiny light. He said it looked like a cheap tracker or modified hotspot bridge. He wouldn't touch it after that. He slid the phone back across the counter and told us to get rid of it. Outside the store, across the parking lot, I saw the seller. Same black jacket, same flat brim hat. He was leaning against a dented silver Corolla beside the old mall entrance, watching us. When he saw me see him, he looked down at his own phone. A message appeared on the blue phone. Not here. Too many people. Marcus read it and whispered, "We're leaving." We got in his car, but the Corolla pulled out behind us. At first it stayed 2 lanes back. Then it followed us past the highway entrance we normally would have taken, through a gas station lot, around a block, and back onto Lorraine. Marcus kept saying, "Maybe it's not him," but he stopped believing that before I did. Then the blue phone buzzed again. Ethan comes alone, or Marcus gets the whole folder. Below that was a picture of me standing outside my apartment building in pajama pants, taking trash out. I had no idea when it had been taken. Marcus pulled into the laundromat lot because it was bright and familiar. People were inside. A woman was folding towels near the window. 2 guys were arguing at a vending machine. It should have felt safe. The Corolla parked at the far end of the lot. The seller got out. Marcus locked the doors. "Don't get out." The blue phone rang for the first time. No number. Just a green button. It vibrated in my lap, loud against the plastic dashboard. I don't know why I answered. Maybe because running with it ringing felt worse. A man's voice said, "Tell your friend to drive home." I hung up. The seller started walking toward us. Marcus reached for the gear shift, but a delivery truck had pulled in behind us and blocked the lane. The seller wasn't hurrying. That made it worse. He walked like a person who already knew where we would go. I saw the diner across the street. Not a nice diner, just one of those late-night places with big windows and a neon open sign. There were 3 people at the counter and a woman mopping near the register. I opened the car door. Marcus grabbed my sleeve. "Ethan, if he wants me alone, I'm going where people can see me." I crossed between cars, not running until I reached the curb. A horn blared. I nearly slipped on dirty snow at the edge of the street. Behind me, the seller called my name once, not loud, just enough to prove he had it. Inside the diner, the heat and fryer smell hit me all at once. The woman with the mop looked up. "Bathrooms for customers," she said automatically. "Someone is following me," I said. She didn't ask if I was sure. She looked past me through the window, saw the man outside, and set the mop against the counter. "Behind here," she said. Her name tag said Monique. I moved through the break in the counter. She pointed to a spot near the ice machine, then walked to the front door and turned the lock just as the seller reached it. He tried the handle once. Monique stood there with one hand on the deadbolt. "We're closed for cleaning." The neon sign still said open. He looked over her shoulder at me. His face was so plain that I have trouble describing it. Not angry, not nervous, just a man being denied something he expected to receive. "I left something with him," he said. "You can come back tomorrow," Monique said. "It's mine." "Then call tomorrow." The 2 regulars at the counter turned around. One of them stood up, a big guy in a reflective roadwork jacket. He didn't say anything. He just stood. The seller looked at the road worker, then at Monique, then at me. The blue phone buzzed in my hand. Last chance. I threw it as hard as I could against the tile behind the counter. The screen cracked and the back popped loose. A little piece skidded under the soda machine. The seller's face changed then. Not much, but enough. His jaw tightened. He turned and walked back across the street. Marcus came in 5 minutes later, breathing hard, with the phone pieces in a plastic takeout bag. The Corolla was gone. Monique let us stay until her actual closing, even though it was after 2 in the morning. She gave us coffee we didn't ask for and told Marcus to pull his car around back when we left. I tried to pay, but she waved it away. The printed proof came from inside the phone case. Marcus found it when we were sitting in his car under the diner's back light, going through the pieces to make sure nothing still blinked. Folded between the case and the battery was a narrow thermal receipt, like one from a gas pump or parking kiosk. It was printed the day before we bought the phone. It listed my first name, Marcus's first name, Friday laundry 11:15, gray Honda, and argues when tired. At the bottom, in small text, was the address of my apartment building. We never learned how long he had watched us before the sale. Maybe he picked us at the laundromat first and waited until we showed up at the market. Maybe he had done it to other people. We reported what we had, but without the man's name, a real vendor record, or a license plate we could read clearly, there wasn't much anyone could do with it right away. Marcus and I stayed friends, but not in the easy way we had before. We had to say things out loud that we used to hide behind jokes. I paid him back for everything I owed. He admitted he liked being the reliable one because it made him feel less stuck. It was awkward but honest. I don't buy used electronics from cash tables anymore. I don't connect strange devices to my Wi-Fi. I don't leave location sharing on because it's convenient. The part that stays with me is how crowded everything was. The market, the laundromat, the diner, cars passing, people folding clothes, employees cleaning counters. I used to think being seen meant being safe. Now I know a person can study you in public for weeks, and everyone around you can still be looking the other way. Story 9. The landline rang from a phone Aunt Linda said wasn't connected. That was the first thing that happened at 10:13 on our first night in her house in Sacramento, while Ava and I were sitting on the living room floor eating takeout from paper containers. I was 24, working as an elementary school aide, and taking online classes to finish my degree. Ava was my best friend, and Linda was her aunt, the kind of relative who paid you in cash and left sticky notes on everything. We were alone because Linda was on a 2-week cruise, and I had said yes to house sitting because I needed the money and didn't want to seem nervous in front of Ava's family. Linda's instructions were simple enough. Feed the cat twice a day, water the patio plants, bring in packages, and do not answer the landline after 10 p.m. She had said it lightly, while showing us the alarm panel and thermostat app. Old house, she told us. Old weird wiring. If it rings late, ignore it. Promise me. Ava laughed and promised. I promised too, because it sounded like one of those family quirks people exaggerate. The phone sat on a little table in the hallway beneath a round mirror. Beige plastic, curly cord, dusty buttons. It looked like it belonged in a doctor's office from 1998. When it rang that first night, Ava's cat, Pickle, lifted his head and stared down the hall. Ava muted the TV. No way. The phone rang 3 times, then stopped. We didn't answer because the rule was clear and because it was easy to explain away. Maybe Linda still had some kind of bundled phone line. Maybe scammers called old numbers forever. Maybe a neighbor had the wrong house. We made jokes about haunted telemarketers and went back to our food. At 10:15, the answering machine clicked. A woman's voice said, "Linda? It's Marcy from next door." I saw the kitchen light flickering again. "Call me if the girls need help." Ava frowned. Aunt Linda doesn't have a neighbor named Marcy. Maybe she means across the street. Her neighbors are Tom and Elise. That was the first time we looked at each other without smiling. In the morning, everything felt normal. Sacramento sunlight came through the white shutters, Pickle yelled for food like he had never been fed before, and Linda texted from somewhere off the coast of Mexico that the buffet was terrible. Ava asked if she had a neighbor named Marcy. Linda wrote back, "Nope." Why? Ava didn't answer. She didn't want to worry her. That was our mistake, but it came from a normal place. We were two adults trying not to make a big deal out of one weird call. I also didn't want Linda thinking I was dramatic. She had trusted me with her house, and I wanted to be the kind of person who could handle a creaky hallway and an old phone. The next night, the landline rang at 10:13 again. This time we stood in the kitchen and watched it. 3 rings. Silence. Then the machine. A man's voice said, "This is Sacramento City Water. We received a shut-off alert for this address. A technician will be by tomorrow between 6 and 9 p.m. Please make sure an adult is home." Ava whispered, "Do they call at night?" "I don't know." We checked Linda's mail, her email on the printed instruction sheet, and the city website. Nothing about water. The bill on her counter was paid. Ava texted Linda, but Crew's Wi-Fi was spotty, and the message sat undelivered for almost an hour. The next day, a white van drove slowly past the house at 6:12 p.m. It didn't stop. It went around the block and passed again at 6:20. There was no city logo on the side, just a magnetic sign on the passenger door that said water service in blue block letters. I remember that detail because the sign was crooked. Ava said, "Maybe that's normal." Maybe. Neither of us opened the door when a man finally knocked at 7:05. He stood on the porch wearing a navy polo and khaki pants. He had a clipboard, a tool belt, and a lanyard with an ID card turned backward. On the doorbell camera, he looked into the lens and smiled. "City Water," he said. "We're checking old pressure valves in this neighborhood." Ava spoke through the doorbell app. We didn't request service. "Your aunt did," he said. Ava went still. He said, "Linda asked us to come before she left. She said 2 young ladies would be here and a cat named Pickle, so please don't let him out." Pickle was sitting behind us in the hallway, tail flicking. The man knowing the cat's name should have been enough. But Linda had sticky notes on the counter, and one of them said Pickle gets 1 scoop only. Anyone who looked through a window could have seen it. That was how we explained it, because explaining it kept us from having to decide what to do next. Ava told him we would call the city and reschedule. The man's smile thinned. I wouldn't wait too long. Sometimes old valves fail all at once. Then he looked past the camera, toward the left side of the porch, where the kitchen window was. "Have a good night," he said. He left, but the van stayed parked halfway down the street for another 20 minutes. That night, the phone rang at 10:13. Ava said, "Don't." I wasn't. The machine picked up. This time the voice was my mom's. "Nora, please pick up. I know you're there. I need you to listen to me." I stepped toward the hall before I could stop myself. Ava grabbed my wrist. "No. My mother lives in Colorado. She hates leaving voicemails and calls from her cell every time." The voice sounded like her, but not perfectly. The pauses were wrong. It was like someone had taken pieces of her speaking and arranged them into a sentence. The voice said, "Don't trust Ava if she tells you to leave." The message ended. Ava let go of my wrist like I had burned her. I called my mom from my cell. She answered sleepy and annoyed on the 4th ring. She was fine. She had not called. When I asked her to say my name, she said, "Nora, you are scaring me," in her real voice, and I had to sit down on Linda's stairs. After that, we stopped pretending it was wiring. Ava called Linda again and finally got through. The call kept cutting in and out, but we heard enough. "There shouldn't be a landline," Linda said. "I canceled it 10 years ago." Then the call dropped. We packed our bags in silence. We should have left immediately, but the front door wouldn't unlock. The smart lock made its little motor sound, then stayed red. Ava tried the app. It said access denied. She tried the back door. Same thing. I checked the garage door panel, and the screen was blank. At 10:28, the hallway phone rang again. Pickle hissed. Not at the phone. At the round mirror above it. I turned and saw a tiny red reflection near the bottom of the mirror frame. It blinked once, then went dark. I walked closer and saw that the mirror wasn't flush against the wall. A thin black wire ran behind it, down toward the phone table. The old phone jack cover was loose. Behind it was a small white box with a green light and a short antenna. Ava whispered, "What is that?" I don't know, but I knew enough. Something had been added to the house. Something that made the dead phone ring, or made it seem like it was ringing. Something close enough to the smart home system to lock us in. The front porch camera chimed. The man from the water van stood outside again. This time he wasn't smiling. He pressed the doorbell. "Nora, open the door." Ava turned to me. Her face looked emptied out. He said my name again, patient and clear. "Nora, I can explain the phone." The landline rang behind us. Ava backed into the kitchen. Bathroom window. It's painted shut. Bedroom? Maybe. The doorbell chimed again. Then the man said, "Ava, your aunt told me where the spare key is." We heard him step off the porch. The spare key was not near the front. It was in a little lockbox inside the side gate, because Linda had said delivery people sometimes left things in the covered breezeway. If he got into that breezeway, he'd be between the exterior gate and the kitchen door. I remembered the house tour then. Linda had shown us the sprinkler controls on her phone because the patio plants were fussy. She had shown us the exterior lights. She had shown us the doorbell speaker and the old alarm panel, which still had a panic function even though the monitoring was not active. Ava was trying the bedroom window when I opened Linda's tablet on the counter. It was still logged into the house controls. My hands were clumsy, and the first thing I tapped was the thermostat. Then lights. Then exterior. The side yard camera loaded. The man was at the gate with his back to us, reaching into the lockbox. He had gloves on. I hit the gate control. Nothing happened. I hit it again. The gate clicked, and the man looked up. He pushed through just before it closed behind him. Now he was inside the narrow breezeway, between the fence gate and the kitchen door. He tried the kitchen handle. Locked. He knocked once. Not hard. Almost polite. "Nora," he said through the door, "don't make this worse." I hit the sprinkler zone for the side yard. The sprinklers came on with a violent ticking sound, spraying the breezeway, the windows, the man's legs, the door, everything. He swore and stepped back. I turned on every exterior floodlight at once. The side of the house lit up white. Then I opened the doorbell speaker through the tablet and pressed talk. "There is a man in the side yard at 418 Marigold Lane," I said, loud enough that the outdoor speaker squealed. "He is not supposed to be here. Neighbors, please look outside." My voice echoed down the block. The man froze. I pressed the alarm panel panic button next. The inside siren screamed so loudly Ava covered her ears. Pickle bolted up the stairs. Through the side camera, I saw porch lights flick on at the house next door, then across the street. A dog started barking. The man grabbed the kitchen door handle and yanked once, hard. The deadbolt held. A male voice outside shouted, "Hey, what are you doing?" The man turned toward the gate, but it had latched behind him. He lifted one foot onto the side fence, slipped on the wet concrete, and caught himself. The neighbor shouted again, closer now. Ava got the bedroom window open. It wasn't graceful. We pushed a screen out into Linda's flower bed and dropped our bags first. Ava climbed through. Then I passed Pickle in his carrier, while he made a sound like a tiny engine failing. I went last, scraping my thigh on the sill and landing hard on the mulch. We ran to the neighbor's yard, not the street. A woman in a robe waved us behind her while her husband stood at the corner of the house holding a baseball bat low at his side. The man from the breezeway had climbed the fence by then. I saw him hit the sidewalk running, soaked from the waist down, one glove missing. The white van peeled away without headlights for the first half block. We did not sleep at Linda's house again. In the morning, Ava reached the actual Sacramento City Water Department. A supervisor named Mr. D'Alessandro called her back after checking the address. No service order, no shutoff alert, no employee scheduled, no contractor by that name or description. He said real workers would have marked vehicles, visible IDs, and no reason to arrive at 10 p.m. Linda flew home from her cruise early. She cried when she saw the loose phone jack and the box behind it. A security company found a small cellular bridge hidden in the wall and a cheap camera tucked behind the mirror frame. Someone had also added a temporary user to the smart lock 2 days before Linda left, using an email address nobody recognized. Linda thought it might have happened during a plumbing estimate she'd had the week before. My only lasting proof is a copy of one voicemail Ava saved before the answering machine was taken away. It is Ava's voice, but not her words, whispering, "Don't let Nora leave the house." The sound tech Linda hired said it could have been made from short clips. Ava had plenty of videos online. So did I. So did our families. I believe that. I have to. I still house sit sometimes, but never without my own exit plan. I check window locks before I check Wi-Fi. I ask who has door codes. I don't open doors for uniforms I didn't call, and I don't worry anymore about sounding rude through a camera. For a long time, I thought being polite was part of being safe. Smile, answer, cooperate, don't make things awkward. That night taught me something colder and more useful. A locked door is not an insult. A question does not require an answer. And nobody who belongs outside your house deserves a chance to talk you into letting them in.